What is it that brought the issue of child trafficking to your attention?
Yes, sir.
Okay, for me, it was something that has been definitely a very long time in the making, even from when my boys were little. I think it was just becoming a mom and understanding that like little things that I was hearing about that were terrifying. Not that it's not like I think it hits everybody in a bad place, but as a mom, when you look at your newborn baby and you're like trying to imagine something happen to them, it's just like that cannot happen. So what do I do to make sure it doesn't happen? And it wasn't a big deal at the time because my oldest one is 14, so 14 years ago there wasn't much talk about this. What first got me going on it in the very beginning was I had become aware of a company online called Sevenly.com, and they sell $7 t-shirts for 7 days. And it's a different cause every 7 days that they support. So let's say it's autism 1 week. They're going to make a design. They get with local artists. They make a design. They print out that shirt. They sell it for 7 days, $7. $4.50 of that goes to the cause. Anyways, I was just really into that. I thought that was a really cool idea. So I tried to buy their shirts, like a lot of $7, you know. And one time it was human trafficking. And I was just like, what is this really? Like, that was my first kind of starting getting into it. Again, not a lot of information out there. So fast forward, you know, recently as things have been coming out with the Q stuff or whatever, I've had some friends that kind of re-brought it up to me. And so at first I thought some of them were like completely crazy. And I'm like, how have I known you since middle school and you've like completely gone crazy on me now? As I looked into it more and more and saw the numbers more and more and the information more and more, I started to understand more about not just the scare of the human trafficking, but the pedophilia stuff behind it and a lot of what's going on there. Once I saw that and realized that the prime age for these kids to be taken into this is like, what is it, like 8 to 15 or something? It's like right in there. I'm like, that encompasses nearly every child under my roof.
Yep.
So, time to like get proactive and actually do something. That for me was my catalyst. Yeah.
It would be, I mean, I would probably say the same thing because I do have a 14-year-old daughter, and you know, she wants to go out with her friends and do things like that. And as a mother, I get anxiety about even allowing her to go outside the front door, but that's my main thing. Like, I remember sitting at home literally crying at night because I have a 4-year-old daughter. And I hear stories, you scroll down Facebook and you hear these horror stories of 4-year-old little girls. I'm talking being mutilated from the inside out. And not one person is saying anything about it. If anything, these little girls think that they're taking part in play. They think it's fun. And I, like her, I could not even imagine what I would do if something like that happened to my kids. So it was basically being a mother and things like that. But also just, it just triggered one day. I was in, you know, I had been we talked about it a little bit or whatever, and then I was like, I'm doing something. Like, I'm not sitting at home and losing sleep, crying about it anymore. I have to get out and I have to change it. And I've always said, you know, that a lot of people say, well, I can't just change it. Every company started with one person, one idea, one thought, and at some point they said, you know what, I'm getting up and I'm doing something today. You know, Martin Luther King was one man. He changed the world, okay? He changed the world by himself. Jesus changed the world by himself, but he did get followers, and that's the most important thing. And that, to me, I didn't think going out there Thursday that I was going to have anybody, you know, with me. I knew she was with me. She just wasn't able to make it that day, but I said, I don't give a damn. I don't care if somebody's with me or not. I'm going out here and I'm going to make a stand for my kids. And I'll bring my kids out there because people need to know the harsh reality of it, that my kid's not for sale. So don't even attempt it. But being a mom definitely triggers you differently. Not that it, you know, wouldn't trigger somebody who doesn't have kids, because it does. Because you either have a little sister, you have a niece, you have cousins, you have somebody, even yourself, because it's not just children, it's not just women. It's men, women, boys, whatever, that are all being affected by this. That's why I think it was important for us to change the name from, you know, just moms of East Texas. Like, it's everybody. And it's not just East Texas. We just wanted to know, what the rest of the world know, that East Texas, we're in this too. You know, because I hear a lot of bigger towns and cities talking about it, but it's not talked about around here. And I personally know people that have been trafficked and have survived, or people that have still not been found to this day. So we have to raise our voices for them and let them know wherever they're at that somebody's out here fighting for them. So.
Was there any particular event that made you want to step forward, or was it just like a...
I think it's been, to be honest with you, it's the election coming up. Like, just knowing what certain parties are okay with. Like, what they're not necessarily that they go out and say they're okay with it, but it's just a subject that they're not speaking on. You know, and being that it's an election year, and this is the terrible thing, I understand there's a lot of bad things going on in the world right now, but this pretty much trumps all of it. You know, it's innocent, real innocent lives. You know, it's not criminals, it's not this and that, and it certainly doesn't discriminate. It attacks every single gender, every single race, it doesn't matter. And the election is a big thing for me because I want to open the eyes of these people out here voting and let them understand. You got one person that says nothing about it, one person that's doing everything about it, you know? So that was important for me. And that's kind of what triggered me, so.
What would you say to people who feel overwhelmed with all of the information that's coming out, who are just now coming to realize really what's going on?
For me personally, I would just say, slow down, take a deep breath, look at a little bit of it every kind of time you feel like it, but take lots of breaks because it is overwhelming. It is so overwhelming that you will feel, kind of depressive and just crippled by it. If you just jump feet first. That totally happened to me. Whenever I first got into it, the bigger span, like the pedophilia stuff too, and the things that are going on with that, then started looking into what's going on in China, where they've got this entire race of Muslim people that they're trying to eradicate their entire, all of them. These are the people that are making our Nike shoes, and they've enslaved an entire ethnic group there. So that's trafficking, you know. So once I started seeing it's such a big snowball, and it's just, or maybe a better word is an iceberg. You know, you find that, and then it's just, and it's like, where at what point does this start tapering back into less or something? And I just couldn't find that, and it was really messing with me. And even my husband, a couple of times, I was like, am I getting a little off on this? And he was like, you do need to take a break. And I had to do that. And then after a few days of just kind of processing, I would have the energy to either look into it some more or feel a little bit more empowered to actually do a little something about it. Mm-hmm. You know, because there were times I was just I don't know, I guess you just pack up and move to Antarctica and try to get as far away from everybody as you can. I'm scared. I don't know. You know, that's not helping anything. You know, we can't do that. So what can we do? And there's not a lot, but what we can do is help raise awareness. The more people that know, the better. And just band together and be a group that I think there's, in numbers, we have a lot more power. Yeah.
Do you have any resources that you would suggest people look into to learn more about it that are reliable resources that you think?
I love, for our signs that we make and stuff, I use dosomething.org. They've got really good numbers that are true. You can look up every one of them and it's correct. And it's bullet point style, so it's easy to read through. It's not just an overwhelming amount of information. It's quick little, and that's good to know. We recently, the Polaris.org, they have a lot of information that's really good to know. What was that? Did you do that class that somebody put on the group the other day?
Yeah, I'm going to.
I did do it, and I can look up the name of that because I screenshotted my certificate.
That one's going to be extremely overwhelming.
It's not really overwhelming. It's a lot more than you would think.
Yeah.
It's
is it more just statistics or?
OurRescue.org.
Yeah.
And you can take an online class for free that will help you become more aware of what are the signs of trafficking and exactly what to do if you are suspicious that somebody needs help. They give you, step-by-steps of what you could actually do. And they have a lot of good survivor stories and information and stuff like that. I like that source. And I get a lot of my stuff off YouTube, and I know that that's sketchy, and I know that that's a little bit, but I have ones that I follow that I found are pretty tried and true. And then the other ones that pop up, you kind of take with a grain of salt until you get a little bit better to know them. I've also recently joined Parler, which is an alternative social media. it's kind of set up Facebook style, but not really. But the idea, and it's getting a rap right now for being just for conservative Christians, but really, I mean, it says all over the place, we are not just a conservative social media. What we are is a free speech media. They're not filtering, I don't think, hardly anything unless it's like super inappropriate.
Right.
They're definitely not taking down, like the president's tweets and, things that people share that they're concerned about. They're not removing the things that you share based on they don't like the source or they don't like what's in it or whatever, right? So as long as it's not like a picture of like your kid naked, I think they're fine with it.
Yeah.
But so Parler is a good one. And that's not really a source, it's a social media, but you get a lot of information on that. You can follow a lot of really reputable people there.
What would you say to anyone who's feeling overwhelmed with all of this information?
I still feel overwhelmed, honestly. The more I dig into it, like you said, the whole iceberg analogy, that's exactly what it is. You hear about it, and everybody's heard about it for so many years, but they never really dug deeper into the issue. But I would say, with every bit of information you get, just kind of write it down so that when you do get that energy to go out and actually raise your voice and talk about it and speak to other people about it, to do that. Because honestly, the only way that I'm able to lift some of the weight off my shoulders just thinking about it is actually by doing something about it. And that's what I told myself. I just felt like sitting in my house on my couch crying every day. I was just getting heavier and heavier and heavier because the more I watch my kids play, the more I worry about it. Like, can you get to a point as a parent where you don't even want to get onto your kids? Because when you see them cry or get upset like they do, you automatically get, I do anyways, I get this weird, like, these visions of someone else yelling at my kid or someone trying to hurt my kid and she's in the corner. I'm like, okay, never mind, stop doing that. Like, it scares me to death just to see that picture of it. But it's just getting out and doing something. I think that's kind of helped me feel better about the situation because I feel like I'm being proactive. I feel like I am making a difference. And to be honest with you, I don't think that we thought we were going to be 800 members in like 4 or 5 days. Like, that was not at all. But it's a blessing. It's awesome to see that, to see how many people actually care about it. But it's kind of scary to see that all along this many people have cared about it, but they've been so reluctant to go out and actually do what we're doing. Put forth the effort to say something. And that's the saddest part, is that there's so many people being silent about it. Like, people have got to stop being silent because they have to know that these kids out here, these people that are victims, they can't speak for themselves. They can't get out and do anything. And it's not just overseas, or it's not people being shipped here and there. It's people in your own neighborhood. It's forced labor. It's organ removal. It's so much more than just sexual too. But the majority of it is sexual. But it has a lot to do with things that people don't understand, like the pimping, pimps, and stuff like that is sex trafficking. It honestly is. And that Tiffany Smith, her story is really, really interesting. If you look her up, she's a survivor, and I think she may be out there tomorrow.
Yeah, she posted that she got a shirt made, and it's pretty cool. It says "Human Trafficking on Back." It says "Survivor."
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Her story is pretty good, and actually her story is not based on like her being, sold and bought and stuff like that. It is in a way, but she had a pimp. She didn't have. It wasn't like some random person picked her up on the side of the street and took her. That's not always what it is, but that's the way we see it. And my daughter, we were literally driving down the road earlier, and I told her, I was like, "That's an alley. Like, don't ever walk down." She's like, "That's a small alley. Nobody's gonna look." I was like, "People literally sit and wait though. Like, they do." She's like, "People do that?" I'm like, "Yes." I'm like, I can't explain to her, and that's the hard part, is explaining to your 14-year-old that there are people out there that's all they want to do is hurt you. That's all they want to do is take you from your family. They want to make sure that your innocence is gone, and that all you feel is pain for the rest of your life. And it doesn't matter if you survive. I honestly think that's why it's so important for rehabilitation centers and to get these people ready to go back out into the world, because they'll never be the same. It doesn't matter. It's like a drug addict. They say once an addict and always an addict, regardless if you've been clean for 10 years. The person that goes through that will never forget the way that they felt, ever. So that would be my message to people, is just get out and try to do something, because that's really the only way that you're going to feel better about the situation, because you feel like you're sitting here and nothing's being done. So you have to do it yourself a lot of times.
Did you have any negative reactions to your first protest or anything since then?
The very first one, other than, certain people just not really paying attention, not really. We had a lot of people turn their heads and not really want to read the signs and not want to look into it, because I think people think out of sight, out of mind. If they're not thinking about it, it's not happening. Well, I'm hoping that the bigger we get, the more people are forced to look at it. But I think that was the most negative thing to me, is it really bothered me when I'm sitting here with my 4-year-old, my 14-year-old, and we're holding up signs, giving you statistics, giving you facts, and letting you know what's really happening. They tend to ignore it.
And hilariously, like, I found that more women drive by and are like,
Yep.
I can't see you, than men, and you're like, hello, you're like way more high risk for this. Like, you need to realize. And while we haven't had a lot of in-person negativity on our group, we have had, I don't know if you take this as negative, but it like makes me just a little bit angry every time this happens. But we've had a couple of different people post stuff like, good job holding your signs, but what are you really gonna do? I get what I think their sentiment is there, which is that they want to see more done, but
It's been a week and a half, so we're definitely trying here.
We do have a lot that we want to do, but one thing that we don't want to see on our page, and that I don't want to see at all, that we've had it once or twice, is saying stuff like, let's just take them all out and shoot them and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that gets us anywhere. Obviously, that ain't going to help, and we're not going to do that, so.
It's a thought, but we're not going to do that.
Yeah,
we're not promoting violence and all that, so.
I don't think any one of us would like stand up for like the rights of a pedophile, but do we think that we should drag him out in the street and shoot him? I mean,
that's not for us.
it's not our thing. And you know, so going back to the negativity thing, it feels a little negative when people say stuff like that, because it feels like what they're really saying is, what makes you think you're doing any good standing out here holding signs?
Mm-hmm.
When we really feel like this is the first step that has to happen
Yeah,
before you can get your feet on the ground to do more. We do have some ideas to like maybe try to start a little bit of a nonprofit kind of do some stuff to gather up a little money, maybe sponsor some like, that's tricky too. You have to really be careful who you give your money to in this realm and in many other realms. But I mean, I'm sure you guys know. I mean, it's there are a whole lot of groups out there that, you know, a lot like Feed the Child in Africa, where you later find out that like you paid $20 a month to, you thought you were feeding this kid, and they actually like received like 30 cents worth of actual food from your money, because by the time it goes through the whole gamut and and we want to we'd like to find, I think, a local place that actually is doing sting operations or something like that.
Yes.
We're looking, so if anybody that sees this has a great idea, we'd like to hear them. But it will have to be super verified by us. We're gonna look into it really hardcore and be really, really careful with that, because I will just be damned if my money turns around and somehow goes to the wrong people on this.
I would like to go and actually, I would like to physically go and talk to these people and kind of see, because there are some halfway houses basically for these victims and stuff like that, and I would love to go check that out, and maybe even talk to some of them, get their story, and obviously talk to the people who are running the business, because I want to make sure that they are boots on the ground, that they are people that are going out here and taking these people out of these situations, because there's really not enough of that. There's not enough. I mean, like we've seen on the page, there's something going on in Longview that I've been kind of looking into a little bit.
Yeah.
It's very worrisome. It's not even kind of, because it's supposed to be a ministry. I don't know about all that, you know, and I mean, and that's another thing. People think that churches and people like that, the godly people, are not out here doing these things. They are way wrong.
Absolutely.
There's probably more of those, because they're hiding in plain sight. They're making you think that they are just saints. That's an easy way to distract somebody. They're like, oh no, I'm a holy roller. No. You gotta look a little bit further into that. You gotta be super careful who you send your kids with and things like that. And that's super, super important to me. But yeah, making sure that we go, whatever we do raise goes to a place that is gonna definitely do the right things with the money.
And this is random, but you just reminded me of this with the church thing. But I had a realization today. I was watching on Netflix. There's a documentary called Wild Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a Netflix watcher?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you gotta watch it.
I watch Vampire Diaries all day.
Oh, okay. It is about this like cult that sprung up in the late 70s, early 80s, and it was like a guru in India who then bought all this tons and tons of land in like, is it Montana, Wyoming, something like that, like the Nowheresville, and they took over this town. Anyways, what they ended up doing was they wanted to have a bigger population of their cult. Became a cult really quick. It went from a guru with some followers to a cult really quick, which is almost 100% of the time. But anyway, so what they would do is they would go up with school buses to New York City, and when people would get out of jail, you know, I mean, you get a DWI or something, eventually you're out of jail, right? They would set up these like tents and be like, we're gonna give you water, blah, blah, blah. If you get on this bus, we're gonna take you to this place, we're gonna take care of you. They even they supplied them with drugs, with alcohol, with clothes, with water, with food, with everything. All you had to do was get on this bus, never have to work or anything, go to this cult. Anyways, they got just a massive following doing that. By having the population numbers, they were able to take over like the city council. They were like renamed everything, and it is a wild, crazy story. Wild, Wild West. No, Wild Wild Country. Did I say Wild Wild West?
Yes.
I'm sorry, that's Will Smith. Just kidding.
Absolutely.
We get wild. Okay, no, so Wild Wild Country. What I'm saying is that's trafficking as well. Nearly every cult is. This is also just exploiting people that are in vulnerable situations, which is the definition of human trafficking, is exploiting somebody that is in a vulnerable.
It's okay.
Exploiting somebody who is in a vulnerable situation for your own personal gain in some way, even if it's not monetarily, but and a lot of times it is. Anyways, the culty stuff. Trafficking.
It could go on for days.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Of that
and all
nature,
that,
for sure.
But I was watching that this morning and I'm like, cults are human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Like so much of the time. Almost always.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hadn't thought of for sure.
Do you have any personal stories about human trafficking or?
I have not been human trafficked, no. I myself, that has not happened. I am a survivor of childhood molestation. It was generational in my family. Basically just a generational problem that went on. Again, something that I was very determined as I became a mother to put the screeching halt to. Not gonna happen. So, another thing that I'm interested in looking into more is sort of like what we do culturally that lends our kids to be vulnerable to things. If we had kids that were a little bit more assertive for their personal space, or a little bit less afraid of confusing, having a reverence for their elders, let's not confuse respect with violation, and let's not start to. There are those things, and I posted something in the group the other day. It's a big long write up about a mom supporting her daughter in this position, but it's
we've got some questions about that.
Oh, okay, then I'll hold on.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not a survivor of human trafficking. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say that, but then I was kind of going over the statistics that you sent me to that page. Do something.
Yeah.
And it actually said that, it says in here that marriage is a form of human trafficking. Not marriage in itself, no, but
like arranged
anything
marriage?
Forced. Because it says here human trafficking can include forced labor, marriage, prostitution, and organ removal. Mm-hmm. And that kind of just made me wonder. I was actually sexually abused by my ex-husband very badly for 6 years and didn't realize that might have been a form of what it was. It's obviously not the main.
It's just your wifely duty, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what happened when it first occurred, was that you're my wife and you will submit. It's that kind of thing, and it kind of felt like that for me, and I never really thought about it that way until I read that statistic, and I was like, maybe that was a form of it, but I'm not at all clumping myself in a position with any of these other people, because they're definitely in much worse situations than I was, because I got out of there. Maybe not the legal way, but I got out of there, okay? It's still alive, don't worry.
I was going to say, what was illegal?
Was that just a confession to murder?
Yeah, he's most definitely still alive. Court dates prove that. But no, I'm a survivor of sexual abuse, verbal abuse, things like that, and that's one other thing that kind of triggered me to do this, because I honestly kind of put myself. I felt like I chose that life for such a long time, and the fact that there are people out here that are not. I mean, they didn't choose that. They didn't go out and marry this person in order to be treated this way. It's forced on them, and nobody is talking for them. Nobody's speaking for them. And it's sad to say, like, so many people in my family had inclinations that this was happening, but nobody said anything.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
that's
like-
really the problem. That's what falls under the
Yes.
umbrella is just the ignorance of this is just how it is, and we don't talk about it.
100%. And that's what I felt. I was like, if somebody in my family would have spoke up on my behalf, because I was so scared. Like, I was scared that if I did talk, because I was told, you know, the reason why you get hit is because you talk so much. So I kept my mouth shut. You know, if somebody would have stood up and said something for me, I would have maybe grew a pair and said something for myself. I did eventually. Okay, I did eventually. Thank God for that. But I'm just saying, like, that's kind of what we're doing. That's what I'm hoping is the fact that we're raising our voices. People that are allowed to speak, those ones that are married to abusive men who are forcing them into situations that they don't want to be in, or forcing them with their friends and things like that, because that happens too. That maybe they'll be able to speak up. They'll have courage to speak up and know that there are people out here that are advocating for them, and that I would open my doors to a woman. Honestly, if she said, well,
Absolutely. Send us a PM.
I need your help, like, let a girl put a dot.
We'll find
Put
somewhere.
a period in
Yeah.
the comment section. I'm coming to get you. Like, drop a pin. I don't care. I would 100% because I've been there, and I wish that somebody could have came and got me. That somebody would have. But at that time, it was a generational thing to be abused by your husband. I just thought that's what love was. And that's the worst thing, like you said, about we're conditioning our children. Like, when you say, oh, your uncle's just trying to do this, like, just go sit on his lap. Go, no, absolutely not, because a lot of molestation and trafficking and things like that does occur within the family.
Oh yeah.
So that's really the scariest part. We cannot condition our kids to be comfortable with somebody touching them in a place that they're not comfortable with. And that's that whole doll thing, kind of like that just completely
Yeah, that
threw me
was
through it.
new.
I was like,
Yeah.
you can't try and say that that's what that's supposed to be. I mean, this is nothing about it on the box, so why do we need to put a button on the private
Oh yeah,
parts
the
of
Disney.
doll?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was like, I'm hoping to sue somebody because I was not pleased that my daughter loves trolls, and thank God she didn't see that doll. And I never would, because that's not okay. That is not okay at all. Had they said something about the button, it still wouldn't be okay. In
Yeah.
my eyes. There's no reason for anything to be right there.
Agreed.
Like on the LOL dolls, they want to put private parts on LOL dolls now. I don't find that to be okay.
No, and it makes me really sad because I freaking love LOL dolls.
Why do we need to put private parts on them? Like, we know that, like, Ken wears underwear, Barbie wears panties. Like, we know this. We don't need to put a penis on it and a
Yeah.
vagina on it. We don't need that. We know that that's under there, but we don't need to. For kids, like, come on, let their moms and dads explain to them what all that stuff is. Don't take our rights away as parents as explaining this stuff to them. Like, that's my job to explain to my kid about the birds and the bees and things like that. They shouldn't have to be exposed to anything like that. Like sex ed, they need to calm down with that in school. They need to let me talk to my kids about that first, but honestly, there are parents that refuse to talk to
That's
their
the
kids.
problem.
Yeah.
There's many that won't.
My son, my youngest, he's 11 years old, and I've started having that conversation with him.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna start having these thoughts, and it's gonna start changing your physical stuff.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's important, but don't take a parent's right away to be able to explain to them why this feels this way, or why this does this. You know, like, that's our
Well,
jobs to.
Do you not think it's important for there to be a more openness of knowledge with that kind of thing and make it less of a stigma to
Mhm.
talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have an open door policy in my house. You think my kids can ask me anything, and I do not nickname any parts because I feel like that's
Same.
confusion
Yeah.
to them. Like, they're like, oh, Mama said don't touch my lily. Like, first of all, it's a vagina. That's a penis, and it's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you think it because kids are raised to think that it's a bad word, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's anatomy. That's what it is, you know. But definitely, I mean, I think that needs to be a more open conversation. But when a kid is ready for that, and I've made sure that my daughter, she's 14, and I know what I started thinking around that age. And I told her, I was like, if you feel some kind of way, let me know. We'll have the talk. Whatever you want to be on birth control, that's fine. We'll do that too, because there are instances where rape happens. You know what I'm saying? And that's the last thing I want is my daughter to feel like she has to have an abortion or something like that because that happened to her. I want to be a proactive parent, and I think that's a big part of it. She is 14. I said, if you feel the need to do anything like that, or you're feeling some kind of way towards a boy, talk to me about it, because then I know that we need to take steps to make sure that if feelings, you know, emotions run high and things happen, you're not going to come up pregnant. You're not ready to be a mother. When you're 18, you're not going to be ready to be a mother. It might happen. You're just going to have to adjust to it. But as long as you're under my roof, I'm not paying child support. I'm not raising no more kids than what I got. But I mean, it definitely needs to be a more open conversation. And I've been very, very open with her about everything that we've been doing, and I don't hold back on the details because I need her to be scared. I need her to realize this stuff is bad. Like, it's not a game. It's not just a fairy tale. It's not just a story in a book. This is real life. And yes, these things really do happen to people. I mean, the goriest of things that you can think of, it happens. So there's safety in numbers. That's why I say on the page, you know, when we do these protests or whatever, do not allow anybody to walk to their car alone. That's just a safety thing for me. Don't do it. Don't let me catch you doing it. You know, if you're the last person there, call somebody. I mean, you should never be the last person there. You know, these people.
Yeah, don't let anybody be the last person.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not. I think there's safety in numbers, and that's what I try to teach my daughter or whatever. But she's been pretty good. She's a very smart kid, thank God. But yes, there does need to be a more open conversation about sex and human trafficking and the things that are going on in the world, because they need to be aware of it for sure.
What comments do you have about the article about bodily autonomy?
You want to go for me? Okay. As I kind of said earlier, I think that we prime our children sometimes unknowingly. We don't, obviously nobody's trying to do this, but sometimes we prime our children a little bit to be more susceptible, I think, to being victimized or being afraid of speaking up, because we confuse that, like I said earlier, with like a maybe it might be disrespectful to say something about Uncle so and so. You know, maybe you're afraid of your family saying he's just tickling you. He's always been like that, like, or whatever. Or in my family, it was go sit on Grandpa's lap.
But if you're uncomfortable,
yeah,
it's uncomfortable.
Absolutely, and it should be that anything, and that's what the article says, is anything at all that you're uncomfortable with, speak up. And if the child cannot find it within themselves to speak up, in this article, the child was able to say to the mom, will you say it for me? And then as parents, we've got to absolutely immediately be like, hey, back up. Like, you've got to absolutely have their back if they come to you with that. It's something that I've always taught my kids. I don't care if it's a hug or if it's somebody holding their hand on your shoulder, anything like that. Your body is your body. You absolutely have every right in the world to dictate what goes on with your body 100% of the time around 100% of the people. There is no exception. It is absolutely your right. So that's what I try to drive home to my kids. And you know, like, something that concerns me is I have a little one that's 6, and I've talked to him so many times, and you know, I ask him, what if a grown-up tells you something and they say it's a secret and you shouldn't tell me and you shouldn't tell your parents? And he's like, oh, I tell mom anyways, because he knows the answers, right? And well, what if somebody says, if you don't tell your mom, I'll give you a piece of candy? And he's like, I'm going to take the candy and I'm going to tell you anyway. Because he thinks he's going to outsmart these people, right? Okay. So then when I get into this, here's where he gets messed up. What if it's grandma? What if grandma tells you a secret and she says, you cannot tell mom and dad about this ever? What if it's grandpa? What if it's your teacher that he loves, his teacher at school? He'll still give me the right answer, but there's a catch in it. I see his eyes kind of go, oh yeah, okay. And that, you know, I think talking it, like, just trying to get them to realize that it is not disrespectful. Why, whenever I get to grandma and grandpa and teacher and things that he sees as authority figure, why does that scare him a little bit? Oh, so sorry. It's because of the respect factor. It's because he's been taught he's a yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am kid. We sit at the table, we don't put our elbows on the table, you know, we blah, 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 all the mannerly stuff, right? And I'm big on manners, and I try to, and I hope that I'm succeeding at teaching him that there's a difference in that whenever it comes to your body, there's no, we're not going to worry about respect for authority at all. We're going to worry about taking care of ourselves with that and asking for help if we need it. Hopefully that works. But the body autonomy thing, man, I think that goes deep. I think it's got a lot of religious roots that are taken out of context. I think that it has a lot of cultural roots that may or may not have been put in there deliberately. I don't know. I think that it goes very deep within not just our culture, because Americans, like worldwide, aren't even super respectful towards elders. And if you look at the Asian community and stuff, they are like so much more respectful towards their elders. But I think that it's something that we have got to get our kids to understand that there is a big difference between respecting somebody with the way that you speak to them verbally or whatever have you, or obeying that they say sit down in your class and don't run around like a wild Indian. But when it comes to our body, that is a whole different, there's a line. Why do we not already have that? Even with mental abuse, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're kind of starting to try to breach it with the bullying stuff, although I think they're just a little bit off center with it a little bit. But our kids ought to be more assertive too, that if somebody says something to them that they feel is really super hurtful to them, instead of just being like, oh, I'm gonna go cry, like, in the whatever, clap back. Yeah. You know, I mean, we need to stand up for ourselves a little bit. That's part of it too. If you will let somebody run over you mentally and emotionally, you will damn sure let them run over you physically. If that's not true, then abuse doesn't exist, because the grooming process by any abuser is so mental and emotional. And when they get you there, that's when they can cross that line into, actually abusing you physically. So I think that that's a big conversation that needs to be had by people that are a lot smarter than I am, that know a lot more about that subject. But it's definitely something that I see in my own kids, that they almost equate the mental respect and the physical respect. And, there needs to be a difference there, and there also needs to still be some more assertiveness for how we allow other people to treat us. I believe that you teach other people how to treat you.
100%.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really a way to disrespect someone when it comes to your physical. Like, when a child has a gut feeling that somebody is touching them in a way that is not okay, they should never feel like they can't tell somebody. Like, they should always feel like that conversation is open. They can be like, Mom, Uncle John touched me here, and I don't think he's supposed to. Like, that's why I think it's really important, even for my kids at a young age, to know that nobody touches you anywhere. Not even Mommy, not even Daddy. Like, I make that clear. When I wash my kids, I'm like, you can wash that and you can wash that, okay? I'll wash everything else. If you can't reach it, whatever. But I mean, nobody is to touch you there, period. And I think that's a really, really important thing. I don't think there's
until they get old enough to get consent for that, nobody needs to.
No.
I mean,
and apparently they're not going to change the age of consent.
And on that note, can we just do away with changing diapers then?
Yeah,
because that would be great. No, but I know what you mean. Like, once they get past that.
And on that note, like when I worked up at the daycare, there was, I don't know, it felt weird to me the way that they make you change babies' diapers in a daycare. They don't make them lay down, and I think it's just kind of a way of getting them ready to do potty training and things like that. They just make you change their diapers standing up, and it was awkward. Like, it was very awkward. Like, it's weird. I don't.
Because you have to sit down, so you're like level with the genitalia.
Will you tell them to bend over so that you go? I'm like, I'm not doing that. And first of all, wipe your own bum. I'm not doing it. And there was actually a little girl in my class that I'm not going to mention her name, but she was actually being abused at home.
And you could tell.
I could tell. When a little girl's in your class and when she goes to the bathroom, there's blood in her stool. There's something going on, and the mom would get so angry at me. Anytime I would ask her anything, I'm like, well, such and such had this. Well, that's just because something she ate. No, baby. No. That does not happen. And she's such a scared little girl.
Or if it does, go to the doctor, like, right now.
She would come with burns on her skin and stuff like that. And she'd be like, oh, well, Mommy accidentally did this. I'm like, or she said that she stuck something into a light socket. I'm like, no, she didn't. And this little girl had been found at 7 o'clock in the morning roaming outside these apartments by herself. And I'm just like, there's nothing being done about it. Like, the daycare was silent about it because, God, they couldn't afford to lose that $700 a month. I'm like, this is pathetic. Like, and she didn't think to say anything. And her boyfriend was actually the one doing it. But the little girl obviously was told by Mom if she said anything that she would get in trouble. And that's another thing. Don't you ever get your kids so scared that they won't talk to you. Don't do it. And that's a scary thing. And yes, of course, there's going to be family members and things like that. But I have a very good intuition. I have a very good read on people. I can tell you if somebody is sketchy. and I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a gift from God. I don't know. But I'm a very, very good read on people. But I grew up around a lot of abusers and things like that, and I always get this feeling. I used to tell my mom all the time I didn't feel comfortable around my grandfather. Turns out he was a child molester. And I mean, he's gone, rest his soul, but I'm just saying, like, my mom would not let me around them because I told her, I was like, Mom, I don't feel right. I do not feel right. I was touched by my own cousin who he raised, and I was like, the boy didn't know anything better. He didn't know better than to do those types of things. He was raised by a bunch of truck drivers, you know, that porn and do all this type of stuff. And to me, porn is honestly just another form of trafficking.
We have never had this conversation before, have we?
No, but they honestly they look down on it because it's just film industry. No,
my main childhood abuser was also my cousin.
Yeah.
And it began with him that his father was
like that.
Was passing him his little magazines. Mm-hmm. And the next thing I know, he's saying, look at this girl, and showing it to me, and I'm like, oh, it's weird.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I know, it's from there. Crazy, because that's very we had never even talked about that before.
Well, my aunt found out about it.
Yeah.
Like the next time I seen him, he had a black eye. To be honest with you, and I'm kind of glad that they did something about that. My aunt couldn't really do much because, and this may be a trigger for me too, is the fact that my aunt is actually my grandfather's daughter. He molested my cousin is my grandfather's daughter. So my dad's father raped both of my aunts, had 2 kids. She had 2 kids by her own father. And the one who actually touched me as a kid, he was one of the kids. So, I mean, that was a hard thing. They both ended up having, like, incest problems and things like that. But that's a big thing for me. And she was made to keep her mouth shut for so long. I mean, until the point where my cousin dropped down to 80 pounds at 14 years old and was about to die because of the disease. Because my aunt was so scared to say anything. She didn't want to tell anybody. And finally, my mom was like, you have to tell the doctors. And the minute she told the doctors, they put her on the right antibiotics, and she's got to take them for the rest of her life. But they saved her life.
Wow.
So it was pretty crazy, to be honest with you. And that's another thing. I guess I don't know. I'm kind of like waking myself up to a lot of things that did happen in my life, and I'm like, God, maybe I should write a freaking book about it.
Well, and that's one thing we learned is that you can't really talk about trafficking without talking about pedophilia and incest and other sexual deviations that we have so rampantly in our culture, and that are so much less talked about because there's like a stigma attached to it or whatever. Well, why don't we call trafficking a stigma and get mad about that? You know, like as much as we do, we ravenously defend our family members and don't want these secrets to get out.
Exactly.
Come on, you know.
I think we're saving somebody else by telling them our family secrets because there's so many secrets that they can't tell. And I'm not afraid of anybody. Okay, I'm not afraid of anybody coming at me because I protect mine. Okay, protect mine at all costs. But no, I'm not afraid anymore. Like I was for the longest time, and even afraid of speaking out about my ex-husband because of course he's gonna want to say something. Lord knows he will. Please do. Please tell somebody another lie. But the point is, like, I'm glad that I'm speaking up about it because I feel like we're both giving people a lot of courage to speak up for themselves. And just because neither one of us have been thrown into human trafficking doesn't mean that we don't know people that are, or in some form, maybe even been done that way ourselves, because it does include, you know, just abuse in any way, because they're not just selling them, okay, they're sexually abusing them, and people have been, and then these children have been conditioned to think that that's a normal life because they started so young that this is just work, like this is how it's supposed to be, and that's really, really sad to think that way.
Kind of like you were talking about in your marriage too, how you just sort of felt like that was like your wifely duty, and so you didn't really speak out, like even though you wanted to. I think a lot of the women and young girls that are stuck in trafficking kind of feel similarly, especially if they've been in it for a long time. A lot of them are drug addicted and they're scared to get away. They're scared to not have that fix. I mean, and a lot of them too have just been in it for so long that even if somebody walks up to them and says, I want to help you, I want to get you out of this, they're many times not receptive to that. That was one thing in the training that you learned. Like sometimes you've got to like several different times follow up with somebody, get them around a different situation, say, is there anything at all you want to tell me? Is there any, you know, don't be scared. And you have to offer them like some kind of a protection that they can believe in. You know, obviously we can't give them reconstructive surgery on their face and move them out of the country. Great as that would be. This crap is like, you said something about that moving somewhere. I was like, man, we can move somewhere. This crap's everywhere. Yeah.
Like it's taking place everywhere, and people just, I mean, people aren't even I know you hate to think that, but it does. It's a global issue, but I just think that in smaller counties, smaller cities and stuff like that, it's just not being talked about enough. And those are honestly probably some of the biggest ones, because we have kids go missing all the time. Not one person says anything about it. I have a friend who went missing, years ago, Brandy Wells. Her story's been on Vanished, it's been on Unsolved Mysteries, everything like that. And she went missing in Longview years ago. Police in Longview, they looked into it, I think, more probably could have been done. But she's still missing to this day, and they're still looking for her. And no, I mean, that's a weird thing. Nobody's ever seen her, and they were for sure she got thrown in human trafficking. And either at this point she looks so different you couldn't even recognize her, or like you said, it's just a life that she is adapted to, and that's her world now. And some of these women do get addicted to the fix or whatever it is, or they're just too scared to speak up and say anything. So, but there are that's what we want people to know, is there is a way out. I promise you there is a way out, because there's been a lot of people that have gotten out, and it might have been the luckiest thing that they've ever been able to do. But I mean, if it's just a moment that you can slip away and just run as far as you can, that's exactly what. And I love hearing stories like that. I know it's terrible. It's not the bad situation they're in; it's the escape that I love to hear about. It just gives me it just takes a weight off my shoulders when I get to hear that women took a tiny little opportunity to just run, and they just get as far as they can. They run into the right person, and happily ever after, I'm assuming. But they don't. A lot of women probably don't feel worthy after that of anybody, men, kids, whatever. And that's another thing that I think is important with rehabilitation is counseling. Because mentally, it's harder to get past that stuff. Like physically, you can heal, but mentally, it's very, very hard. I don't think trust again, and if you do trust again,
I'm sure it's a lifelong journey for these people.
For sure.
Yeah.
And their kids will probably be, dealing with that too for the rest of their life, because PTSD is a real thing, especially when it comes to these situations. So, counseling is definitely important. I think it's something that has to be ongoing as well. So.
Yeah. Any final thoughts you guys want to share with anybody that's seeing this after the rally tomorrow?
What are your thoughts after the rally for tomorrow?
You think what's happening?
Well, what's going to happen at the rally tomorrow? I hope that it's awesome. I hope that we have a good turnout, because, like I said, the more people we can get out there, the further we're going to reach.
Yeah.
Because we have people from all different counties. I mean, we don't even have people from, I think, just East Texas. I think there was somebody that's completely out of state that decided to join in. I'm like, hey, the more
several in San Antonio, and that's awesome. Anybody in South Texas that we can get. I mean, I'm sure that there's groups there in the bigger cities, but the small cities, if you look at, you can Google human trafficking maps. I mean, they're coming straight up and just all through Texas, and we're a spot, so is Denton. That's my hometown. Got a lot of friends there doing a lot of really, really, really good work in Denton. What's up, Rochelle? But yeah, I think that these small towns, dude, and there's nothing like small town people. You get small town people really good and pissed off, you in trouble. So I think that the rally for us, that's another thing. Like we, small town people band together. Whenever we start feeling like our own are really getting hurt here, it's it's a thing. And moving forward, like for after the rally tomorrow, I guess I would just say that we're gonna keep doing rallies. We're going to keep spreading awareness. We're not going to get tired of it. We're not going to give up. Every victory that we can get in legislation and in law enforcement, any of that is just more encouragement for us. And this is something that will never be totally eradicated. So I don't know that Ashley and I are ever going to be totally done with it.
No.
It's going to be, I think, a thing, like, for a little bit for us. So I would just say that anybody's welcome to join us. We started out as East Texas Moms. We changed to East Texans Against Human Trafficking. That's our Facebook group. And we want men, women, people of all ages to come join us and come rally with us, help us spread awareness.
Yes, exactly.